Hello, I thought we would work with the blends, the alcohol markers from Stampin' Up! Today. Last week I showed you this card, which is really cute, and I mentioned that I would show you how to do some of the blending using the blends markers. And I thought, how about if we do it in some blue and purple tones, and let me get those here, but make the same card, or similar to the same card, but just in different tones. So here is the card layout, and I'll do the coloring of these butterflies, and I got one started right there, and I'll try to do it somewhat similar even though it's a different pattern. So this one, the way that I do it, which doesn't have to be right, but it works for me, is I start out with the darker color, and each of the blends comes in two tones, and you could see on the side this one is light Highland Heather and this one is dark Highland Heather, and you can tell by the cap. And also when you look on the side of it, see how there's the thin line? That means bullet point. There's two different tips, and this is brush point. Not so much that this is a bigger point, because the tip of the brush is really narrow and really nice for coloring in little spots. These markers are sold by the pair or individually, $4.50 or $9. And one time at a Stampin' Up! Event, I had the luxury of having someone from the home office sit next to me, and she was in charge of product. And I asked her, I said, are you going to sell refills or new tips for the blends? And she says, at this price point, $4.50, they're considered disposable, so you use it while you can, and then after that, because they're sold separately, you could replace it. Another thing is when you're using the markers, because this is an alcohol marker, if you can, try not to have the lid off of the marker for very long, because, well, just think, if you put rubbing alcohol on your hand, it would almost immediately dry. And the same with these markers. Not that they would dry up that quick, but it dries quickly, and you don't want to just have the cap off. And sometimes I've been chatting with a friend and I realized, ooh, I have the cap off, just need to put it on. So it comes in most of the colors, not all of them. It seems like each time a new catalog comes out, they introduce a handful of new colors, so I'm hoping maybe in the next catalog they'll all be available. In addition to coming to the two tones of each color, there's also this, which looks white. They call it a color lifter, and when you're doing your coloring, if you happen to make a mistake, this can help you lighten up the mistake. Also, if you're coloring, for instance, the butterfly, and you want to have a highlight on, maybe you're doing an apple, you could use this and make it even one tone lighter than what the solid color pens provide. Also, there is skin tone markers, and there's a bronze and an ivory, which are good, of course, for skin tones, but they're also good for blending. Like the ivory, you could have it pair with the petal pinks or really soft colors. And this one, because it has a little bit more of a red-yellow hue to it, it's nice if you're coloring wood grains, because that adds a nice touch of red hue. So, okay, so to do the coloring, like I said, I usually start with the darker one. And I'm going to show you a few projects just so you can have an idea of all the different things you could do with the blends. So, for instance, I was coloring in this section here. And when you go over just one layer, see how that looks a little bit lighter than the one that I've done two layers? As with any pen, one layer isn't going to really saturate the paper fully. Maybe I'll do a few more. So once the paper is saturated with the color, that is dark Highland Heather. When you do it as just one layer, here, I'll do it again. So just one layer, and I'll do this a few layers. There's a slight difference. That paper just isn't saturated, so it's not the true color, and that could work in your favor sometimes if you'd like. Okay, I could keep going with that. And I'm going to choose the bullet point of the lighter color. So when you do the lighter color, usually it's considerably different. sometimes really different, sometimes not too much. So when you look at what I've just colored, you could see that, oh, I can see light and dark. After you fill in the light area, maybe 2 layers, then go over the seam right here. Let me see if I could get it closer. Right here. So go over the seam a few times and it will be blended. Isn't that pretty? Also, when you're coloring, there's no need to push hard. Just think that there's alcohol ink inside the pen and you need to give it a chance to flow onto the paper. If you push really hard, you'll ruin the tip of your blend. And I've seen some people over there and they're just, oh, the marker is squeaky, and they're pushing really hard and it's just kind of ruining the tip. But just be patient, thinking there's ink in the pen and you just need to give it a chance to flow out onto the paper. So that's looking pretty. Okay, so I would just keep coloring those, and then after it was fully colored, I would put it here on the card. Oh, I got the little wood elements in here. I planned on coloring all of it, but there's no need. I have a few other samples I'd like to show you. I'm going to put this over the top after it's fully colored. That. And then this one once it's fully colored. And then I'm going to put a few rhinestones on it right in the center so it looks similar to this project. And here are all the different colors, and that helped me determine which ones I should use that would match together. I had pulled off to the side these colors thinking I would introduce a new purple, and this Highland Heather matches this marker, so that's why it goes so well together. These are a little bit more of a yellow purple, and I decided not to use those, but you can use the 2 colors that are the same color family, or you can introduce other colors and they do blend just fine. Okay, so that is what I'll show you about this project. So next is this teapot, and in the catalog, look how cute this teapot is. And I was trying to find an image that was somewhat large so I could show you a lot of the coloring techniques. When I was doing the butterflies are cute, but they're tiny and it doesn't let you see much. So I was trying to figure out what should I do with this. I should have a completed card, but that's just so cute that I'm going to stick right with that. So here it is. And I started coloring it. And when you look at this, can you see the 2 different colors and then they're blended? Same with the pool party flower. There's a dark color and the light color. For the center, because that's so small, I did just the 1 color. But I'll do a little bit of this coloring. Oh, and the leaves. I really like those leaves. I'll do a little bit of coloring with this, and then I'll move on to a different project. Before I colored it, I stamped it using the Memento ink. And you need to use this ink. This ink is good for coloring with alcohol markers. Stays on ink is good for anything water-based, such as our regular markers, aqua painting, blender pens, any type of regular coloring, but this ink is specifically good for the alcohol markers. Oh, and another thing is the paper. I really like the Stampin' Up! White and vanilla. It's really smooth. The ink sets on top of it really well. The next project I'm going to show you, I'll let you see what happens if you don't use a nice quality paper. It's not a good thing. Okay, so let's see, how about if I do one of the little flowers? Looking at the tips, I'll use this tip, it's my favorite. And you would think, okay, that's good, move on. But I know that with the first coat of color, it's not fully saturated. And I want to make sure that this is dark pool party completely, not just a light coating, light version of it. So as I go around here, do a second version. I'm thinking about, in Mother Nature, the center part is a little bit darker. And I'll stop in just a minute and you can see the difference between the 2 layers and the 1 layer. Okay, that's good. And now I'll do the second layer. And you can really see the color difference between the light and the dark. What's nice about the blends is I was told from the very beginning that you could replace any color with any color. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But I was coloring a Christmas card in December, and there was a girl, and she was wearing just a little tunic shirt and a pair of jeans. And I happened to color her shirt blue. And I thought, oh no, I wanted that red for Christmas. And then I remember the comment that you can color over the top of it and replace the color. And I gave it a try and it worked. I'll show you in just a minute what I'm referring to. So with that in mind, that you can replace the color, so I have the light version and the dark. So if I go right over this seam here, I'm kind of replacing the dark with the light, which is what makes it look like it blends. Okay, so that's looking really good. I'm doing little swirl motions. It doesn't matter, whatever you are comfortable doing. I'm just trying to give the ink time to get out of the pen and onto the paper. Okay, so that's looking pretty blended. Now I'll do just a few leaves, and then I'll show you, I have an example of the going over a color to make it look like a different color. And what's interesting about the markers is there's thickness to the paper, and what the markers are doing when you're exchanging colors, when you're coloring little images in, is if you trying to think of how to say it. Well, here, I'll show you my little example. So this is the girl's jeans. So like I said, first I colored all of this blue, and then I thought, no, I want her to have a red shirt. So I went right over the top of it and colored it red. And it isn't 100%, but that's pretty close. Then over here I did the whole thing red, and of course I went over the top, which is a darker color, so that's a very easy fix. But when I was talking about the thickness of the paper, when I colored the whole thing blue and I went over the top red, it's like, well, where did the blue go? What it does is it pushes it to the lower layers of the paper, and sure enough, it's still there. I also tried a different sample, and this was doing the whole thing in green, and then I went over with yellow, and I was trying to make it so it was a lighter color. Excuse me, and that works just fine. And again, you could see that the green, yeah, it did go halfway through there, and now it's yellow. So when you're doing your color and your blending, keep that in mind, and it might help you with the blending. So, do the yellow. And now I'll do a little bit, excuse me, a little bit of this. Tickled. That didn't help. That's not good timing.